All right. Good evening, all. My name is Sean Richardson. I'm class of 20, and I'm currently serving as the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations at Providence College. And I want to thank you for attending the Good and Bad of AI, Implications for Society, and our virtual panel. This panel is sponsored by the National Alumni Association as we celebrate 100 years of Providence College alumni. We found this topic to not only be critical in today's society as technology keeps evolving, but also found it as an opportunity to take a look at how different sectors are embracing the rise of artificial intelligence. We have a wonderful program this evening, curated by our Alumni Relations team and Dr. Christine Earley, who will be moderating for us this evening. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This session will be recorded and available on our website for viewing after the event. If you have questions throughout the program, please submit them through the Q&A feature, and we will reserve time at the end of the program to answer them. I will begin by introducing our panelists. Greg Mara, Providence College class of 1999, has spent the past 20 years in technology sales as an account executive for Fortune 500 companies such as Intel and Amazon Web Services. Greg currently leads a team at San Francisco-based data and AI software company Databricks. At Databricks, Greg is focused on helping enterprise life science and health career companies transform their business using analytics and AI. Greg resides in Bedford, Massachusetts with his family and enjoys playing music, coaching his son's sports teams, and exploring the outdoors. As the head of artificial intelligence solutions for OpenBots, Gabriel, Providence College class of 2017, is responsible for the creation of prepackaged and customized automation solutions to enable digital transformation for banks, insurers, lenders, and healthcare organizations. Gabriel leads a team of automation consultants, each with particular specialties across each industry. Gabriel supports his team by providing guidance and pairing firms with end-to-end intelligent automation solutions designed to streamline workflows and generate consistent ROI. Gabriel has over 6 years of experience spanning financial services, enterprise technology, automation, and digital transformation. Gabriel has his master's degree in entrepreneurial leadership from Babson College's Graduate School of Business, and he currently resides in Coral Springs, Florida with his wife and 2 children. Finally, our moderator, Dr. Christine Earley. Dr. Christine Earley is the Associate Provost for Faculty Development and a Professor of Accountancy at Providence College. In her current role, she is responsible for overseeing college initiatives related to artificial intelligence. Her research interests are primarily in the areas of auditing and professional ethics, and she utilizes behavioral methods to study auditors' judgment and on-the-job learning. Her research has been published in leading journals in accounting. Dr. Earley has received her Ph.D. in accounting and master's in cognitive psychology from the University of Pittsburgh, and her undergraduate degree in accounting from the University of Connecticut. Before obtaining her Ph.D., Christine was an auditor in the Hartford, Connecticut office of KPMG. Wonderful. We have some amazing panelists here. We have some amazing experts in the field. Our discussion will last about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions you've submitted. But once again, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. And now I pass it on to Dr. Christine Earley.
Thank you, Sean, and welcome everybody. Feel free definitely to use the Q&A for your questions. We'll be monitoring them as we go, and we will definitely leave time to answer them at the end. So I'm going to ask our panelists, and we'll start with Greg, to just explain their current position. I know we heard a little bit about it in your bios, but what do you do in your current position? What does your company do? And specifically, how does AI relate to your role? And then if you can tell us also what you majored in at PC and what your career journey was to get to the position that you're in now. So I'll let Greg start.
Sure. And thanks, Christine. Thanks for having me. You can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So thrilled to be here and happy to talk about such a interesting and just topical topic as AI. And especially it's in the news every day. You hear about AI. And I've been, I guess you could say, kind of living and breathing it for the past number of years. But I didn't start here. You know, I was a student, obviously, at Providence College, class of 1999, and I was a marketing major at PC, and had a great opportunity, or had a great opportunity at a great time at PC. I think the education that PC provided really helped set me up for success in the business world and working in technology. And I know at the time when I went, technology was not the focus of PC. I know they've come a long way in that area, but at PC, I did a lot of things that are around technology. I worked in the computer lab. A lot of the classes, even though the internet was sort of just emerging as an advertising venue, there was a lot of classes. Dr. Eakin at the time kind of had the vision of that. But during my time at PC, I also did a lot of other activities with BOP. I was into music, lots of things around that. So I think gave me a real well-rounded education, which did help me in my career. After graduation, I really, because of my interest in technology, I kind of sought out those types of roles. And I was also a business major, so I was looking at, you know, management roles, product marketing, and I fell into or sorry, I shouldn't say fell into, I gravitated into kind of a sales account management role. And since then, I've worked for major technology companies. And I think my experience is a little bit unique because if you think about the AI stack, you know, it really does start at the semiconductor chip level. And that's where AI starts. You know, you need hardware to run AI models. And so I started my career at Intel, in a company that Intel acquired, which had customizable chips that nowadays help and are sort of integral into the AI world. And I spent about 12 years there. I moved into Amazon Web Services, and I spent 6 years of my career there. And I kind of hit AWS really as it was emerging to be the technical powerhouse that it is today. If you're unaware of Amazon Web Services, it's one of the 3 major cloud providers, with AWS kind of having the leader, at least in market share. And they are focused, you know, you hear about cloud computing, they're focused in cloud computing, but they really are a AI powerhouse as well too. And that Amazon Web Services obviously is the technical arm of Amazon.com. And they use AI across the board at Amazon, not just at AWS, but at Amazon.com. So if you have recommendation engines, your Prime Video, your deliveries get routed, everything uses AI when it comes to Amazon. And after 6 years there, I decided to move on to a company called Databricks. And Databricks was founded in 2013. And they are a data and AI platform company. So where AWS does sort of the whole, they run the gamut of technology services, including AI and analytics, Databricks focuses specifically in that data, analytics, AI, machine learning realm. And what it does is it provides a platform that allows individuals and companies to build and execute all of their data models, and really help from an analytics perspective and AI to help improve their business or help companies improve their business. So that's just a little bit of background about me. I'll let Gabriel talk a little about himself as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. So my name is Gabriel Skelton. I'm currently the head of artificial intelligence solutions at OpenBots. So my journey, when I was 17 or 18 years old, I had this pressure on me to decide what I wanted to do with my whole career, as many of you may have that are freshmen. I chose to be an accounting major, mainly because of the attractiveness of job security and things of that nature, yet it was not my strong suit at all. I worked my tail off to get consistent C+, B-, to be honest, in those grades, but I learned a lot. I mean, that was the life lessons that I learned by working extremely hard. That was not my strong suit. Really, I still take it to it today. So then I wanted a minor in marketing, but there was no minor in marketing at PC. So I decided to do a double major in marketing. So going from an accounting major to marketing major, I must say the workload is very different, but it used a different part of your brain, right? I went to one piece of course, I used to follow rules very specifically, to another one where you can do almost anything you want. Like, how do you do a marketing campaign to for Vermont. It's so different than, well, how do you follow gap principles? So the point is, it was two complete opposite spectrums of the business world, which was great. And then you go to Western Civ. So as Greg mentioned, I love the fact that now I appreciate it. You probably hear about this all the time, students, but I appreciate it so much more that there was such a strong liberal arts program, because you need to write. And in the work world, you need to write. So when you get really good at writing, your life and your job becomes much easier. So that was a huge piece at PC that I still, to this day, feel like I have an advantage, because I had that foundational piece of needing to write and think critically when analyzing the Iliad and analyzing all these things that you might not necessarily look at in the business world, but does actually apply, because you have to think critically. And if you think critically, you'll advance in your career much faster. So that was where I started at PC, accounting and marketing. And then I was very involved, as Greg mentioned as well, a lot of different organs, from the Association of Latino Professionals for America. I was a co-founder there, Brotherhood, Student Congress, a lot of things I dipped and dabbled, but I love that PC had a lot of different opportunities. After that, and after I graduated, I did not know what I wanted to do. I was applying for jobs. I was struggling to actually get a job. And my senior year, then I decided to apply to grad school. Applied to like only 2 grad schools to kind of, see what would happen. Ended up getting into Babson College, and then ended up going there. That was a phenomenal experience, specifically because I was able to use my hard skills at PC that I learned, and then really open my mind up to see what was possible. Like, everyone at Babson was very entrepreneurial, wanted to change the world. A lot of people from different countries. So at that school, I mean, I think it was 85% of the students were international. So that was huge for me to be able to have that experience. And then finally, I started working at State Street Bank. Very large bank. I mean, I think it's like 40,000 plus people. So incredible experience, because it was a rotational program of seeing 4 different parts of the bank, all the way from finance operations to the prime brokerage arm to client management, and then finally into sales. And that's kind of where I started getting into sales and figuring out finally what I was good at, because I interned at PwC, learned a lot. Again, it was my strong suit. Then I interned for org doing a marketing internship. Almost got kicked out of the organization, out of the internship, because I was not good at it. And finally, when it came to sales, I was more in my strong suit, and I figured that out. So I had to kind of fail at many things before I found out what I was actually decently good at. And then finally at State Street, I said, well, I'm supporting salespeople, and these salespeople are doing very large deals. I bet I can do this at a smaller scale. And that's what I did. So then at the time, it was the pandemic, and I said, you know what? I'm in Boston. I want to move to Florida. And my wife and I decided to move to Florida. I got a job at a startup, working in sales. Quickly kind of moved up the ranks, learned a lot. And then finally, in that job, it was in tech sales. It was based on Salesforce. Many of you may know Salesforce it's the number 1 customer relationship management software. So similar to how Greg was saying, Amazon is Amazon. You all know Amazon, but Salesforce in its own right is, Amazon was based on Salesforce, the way it was made. It's a major company. So the point is, that was a lot of good experience, because so many different industries use Salesforce. So I was able to use that to get my next position. Finally, I am now the head of AI, but I started first as an automation consultant. Really, I was just more like a business development representative. That's basically the equivalent of like a sales executive or account executive, of needing to actually generate leads, and then finally being able to work on closing deals and working with clients. Now, then I started running sales specifically for financial services industry, and now they've put I am now running basically sales and solutions for all sales, so financial services, the healthcare industry, the legal industry, along with many others. And my main role is basically, what does head of AI solutions mean? It sounds like a random title, but really what I'm doing is I'm helping clients figure out how they can apply artificial intelligence specifically to their processes and workflows to make it more efficient, to support their people to do better work, right? And think of someone's job that's 40 hours a week. Imagine they can do that job in 15 hours. Well, now that opens things up that they can do much more work or take on more volumes of work. So that's kind of what I do in my day-to-day.
Great. I want to get to some more questions and hear from you. I'm just going to provide a very brief overview to what's going on at the college for those alums who may be not familiar. So I'm the Associate Provost for Faculty Development, and in my role, when I took this role, I'm in my second year. So my first year of the role, I assumed that most of my job would be in supporting our faculty and in their research and in their teaching. And there are a number of different programs that we have and initiatives at PC to do that. And my life changed a lot starting in the spring semester of last year when I found out when ChatGPT or OpenAI dropped ChatGPT in November. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary on November 30th of 2022. That suddenly became a big focus of my job, because faculty got very concerned about what this would mean for students being able to write papers using ChatGPT, or what it would mean for academic integrity overall. And so we had to kind of pivot and start educating the faculty about what was going on with AI. A lot of faculty at PC said, well, I'm not really involved in technology. It doesn't directly affect me, but then found themselves in Civ, Gabriel mentioned, having to deal with papers that looked like they were written by AI and trying to figure out what that meant for their class. And so we've been spending the better part of last year that we have an AI committee at PC. We gave some guidance to our faculty over the summer as to what to put into their syllabi. We have faculty that want nothing to do with AI, but we also have faculty that want to embrace AI and want their students to use it, generative AI models, on a regular basis, because they feel that will help prepare them better for their careers. But it also, I think, and this is my take on it, as an accounting professor, I love the thought that maybe my students can spend less time focusing on how to use certain tools and how to create tables and visualizations with those tools, and spend more time asking the right questions of data and getting an answer, and then interpreting that answer to have some kind of insight about a company or a question that they're asking. And so I'm excited about that aspect of it, but we're going to get into some of the cautionary aspects of AI as well in just a minute. So let's start positive before we go down another path. And it seems that AI can make life easier. Gabriel, you mentioned simplifying tasks, giving people hours back in their day to do other things, or maybe bringing on more work, so making people more productive, I guess you'd say. But do you think are the biggest positive impacts that AI is having on your industry? So Gabriel, we'll start with you, and then Greg, maybe you could take that after.
Sure, and there's multiple aspects to this. So a lot of buzzwords get thrown around and discussed, like what is generative AI, what is AI, what is machine learning? So in the simplest way, machine learning is a subset of AI. So AI is at the top, right? Machine learning is a subset of AI, where these are models that are trained specifically to do a specific thing, right? When it comes to AI, it's basically pre-trained, right? It can do a lot of things, and then generative AI is pre-trained as well, and then can actually generate new information. That's the piece of generative AI, why it's catapulted the industry in the adoption of it, which is why at PC, a liberal arts university in Rhode Island, is now talking about it so much. And we're doing a panel on this, because before, AI has existed. And a lot of the major companies, like Greg was mentioning, Amazon has been using AI for years, if not decades, along with any major Fortune 100 company, right? But now what's happening is that a lot of mid-sized companies have the ability to use AI. Now a lot of mid-sized universities have the ability to actually learn about AI. So it's changing everything. So basically, like where it's used is, so there's one conversation I have with my clients all the time is, okay, is generative AI good enough now to use? Is it good enough in the future to use? So the question is, what is generative AI good at right now? Because everyone has imagination of what it can be used at in the future, which is great. But what about right now? And if there's one thing, and I'm sure many of you have played with ChatGPT and some of the other potential large language models that exist out there, if there's one thing it's good at right now, it's reading words and understanding words really effectively and really quickly. So when you ask ChatGPT a question, it's able to give you a response very quickly, even if it's never even seen that kind of question before. So it's really good at that. So now what we do in our industry is, I work and I sell to many boring industries. By boring industries, I mean industries that use a lot of paper. So think about a bank, think about a loan. I've been trying to think of examples that might relate to you all, but I expect most college students don't have a mortgage they're paying for, but I'm going to use it anyways as an example. So when you're going to buy a home, right? Imagine your home costs $800,000. You probably don't have that kind of money. You need a loan. So then you go to a bank or you go to a mortgage lender and you say, I want money. Give me money and I will pay you guys a monthly fee. So they, based on your credit history and your income, they might give you some money, And then they'll ask you for a bunch of information. They'll ask you for your pay stubs. They'll ask you for everything just to make sure they know who they're giving a loan to. So when I go to apply to a loan at XYZ Mortgage Company, then they have to review all that information. Now, it's not just a machine that does it, it's people. So a lot of people in the back are looking at your information, making sure it's correct, making sure you are who you are, making sure your salary is who it is. That's the kind of stuff that we've been automating for years without AI, actually. We are automating that with just simple bot technology that replicates human tasks. Doesn't involve AI at all. Very simple, but been used a lot. Now with AI, that makes it much faster. So a mortgage loan package can be like 700 pages. Now imagine if you're working at a bank and you're tasked with looking at a 700-page document. Like imagine reading through all those words, and you need to. It's going to take you a long time. You might not be that efficient doing it because it takes a lot of time. So that's the kind of thing that a person is still doing that, but doing it much faster, much more effectively. Like imagine it's almost like a control find on steroids. Instead of you having to look to see where the specific information is and looking through all of it, you might be able to actually query it and ask it a specific question and say, well, that information you need is on page 635. That just saved you a countless number of hours. So we can go on and on about examples. That's one specific example. Is what is it good at? Reading words really quickly in large volumes, especially when they're on documents that people need to take in all the time, especially at law firms and banks and all these different industries within financial services.
Great. Greg?
Yeah, that's great. And Gabe, thanks for articulating that. I think it really helps to kind of give the audience kind of an idea of like what generative AI can really do. And I think you mentioned that AI has been in use for many years, and it has. When I was with Amazon, I think most people know about Amazon Alexa, and Google has a similar product. But that's AI right there, and that's not generative AI, but that is a form of artificial intelligence. And if you look at Amazon, their recommendation engines that they have to help you find and buy products that are more to your liking. If you think about Netflix, if you go on Netflix and there's recommendations, each account has a different recommendation engine. So you'll see this just in your everyday life. You may not even realize that artificial intelligence is happening, but it is. And I think, in areas, so in my role, and I've been doing this for the last 6 or 7 years of working with healthcare and life science companies, AI is playing a major role in drug development, in clinical trials, in something called pharmacovigilance, where they're looking for adverse effects, and repurposing drugs. So what it's doing is in that particular instance, it's taking data that companies may have been storing for years and years and years, and then running AI models through it. It can actually look to identify potential drug candidates that they never knew were there. So using the latest information, maybe they're using, maybe they're intaking and ingesting papers or FDA reports. Everything kind of comes in. It all sort of gets ingested into a central, what would be called a data lake, and then AIs run on that. And so it's having profound results. I mean, look at the company Moderna, and Moderna is a great case study that was a small startup company that hadn't really had anything out in the market. And using AI, they were able to identify their candidate for their vaccine. They were able to scale their manufacturing. They were able to run synthetic clinical trials during COVID. And they're doing all of this in the cloud and with AI. So that is a great example of how AI was able to develop something that was world-changing within a matter of less than a year. And so those examples are kind of all over healthcare, life science. And, some of them are, maybe less profound, but, allowing a nurse or doctor who is on a call with a patient, and there might be an AI script or an AI prompt in front of them. And as the AI is listening to the conversation or taking notes on the conversation, it can make recommendations to that nurse. It might pick up certain words that says, hey, this is a flag. This might be something that you need to ask a question because it could be an adverse effect, or it could be something that could be a real trouble to the patient. Maybe it's just the tone of their voice. So AI is picking up on all of these things and really helping doctors and nurses and researchers to advance their science. And I think for not just business folks, but people in the science world, like there are many in Providence College who are going to go out and maybe be doctors or researchers. This is going to be helping them to augment their job. It's not taking their job away; it's augmenting it.
Greg, before we move on, I just want to ask you a question on what you just said. So I had a conversation with my doctor recently about this, and she was saying that she does look forward to a day when maybe AI is listening in and taking the notes while we're having our appointment, and then she can focus more on patient care and talking to me and really listening to what I'm saying rather than typing everything into a computer and worrying about getting all that right. And she said, and then afterwards I can go back and look at the transcripts and just make sure they're correct, before they're finalized. I think a big concern that people would have, right, is of their data privacy. What do you mean AI is listening in on my appointment, and what happens to that data? I mean, I think your company Databricks actually addresses a lot of these issues, right, with the data lake that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this is an extremely important topic, and it's one that all of the any company that's handling data, number one, rest assured, especially when it comes to the medical industry, there are already rules and regulations that are put in place both United States and in Europe in terms of what in terms of privacy and what information can be recorded, what needs to be anonymized, meaning anything that could identify you as a patient is eliminated. And so there's all sorts of rules and regulations and government restrictions that are very closely watched. And so if your hospital or your doctor's office, all of that stuff is very closely regulated. And there's governance and tools that all these companies need to use, and then they need to prove that to the government in order to have any of these systems in place. So I'll just start by saying that because I know it's an incredibly sensitive topic, but rest assured these companies are in business because they are able to have privacy. And obviously there's been situations where there's been maybe there's been a hacker or a situation like that has just made the industry even more concerned with it, and the protections are being put in place. Secondly, AI is helping to protect. And so one of the use cases for AI is increased security and being able to combat, those bad actors that are trying to hack systems, but also to put in place better security measures, being able to, test systems to make sure that they are secure. So there's lots going on in that area. To your point about the doctor's visits, I mean, that's a great use case. And being able to for a doctor to just focus on a patient, and if you've ever been in a doctor's office, half the time they're sitting there typing, and they might be looking something up on the website about your about whatever issue you're experiencing. So imagine when you don't have to do that, where the notes are being taken for you, and then it's also being synthesized. And afterwards, the doctor can allow AI to go and synthesize it, listen to the recording, anonymized, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but it's anonymized, so your patient information is protected. But then it's able to maybe come up with, hey, you've said, you had these symptoms, and here are some potential, things that you should be looking for. So, I mean, there's obviously there's a lot that goes into it that I can't, fully explain right here, but I will say it is probably the most important topic on every CEO's mind is security of the data. So it's not something that any company takes lightly. And the major technology companies would not be in business today if they didn't have the governance around that data to make sure that it's safe and secure.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to just take a few. I know we have time at the end for questions, but a few people have asked before we move on to our next questions about careers and about skills. So maybe I'll turn to you, Gabe, but somebody was saying, if somebody comes out of college without a technical background or has been in another career for a while, how do they get involved in AI? And then our second question is about what kinds of skills are people going to have to make sure they cultivate in order to be successful in a world where AI is going to be a big part of their world. So maybe Gabe, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So artificial intelligence is and will change the way people work and will eliminate jobs. Like that is the truth. It will also create jobs. I have a job because of artificial intelligence. My whole company is employed because of artificial intelligence. There are people at our client sites that end up basically upskilling and learning how our technology works, and then they run automation and they run AI at their companies, and they get a team of themselves that also is a part of AI at the company. So what is it going to create more or reduce more? Who knows what it'll do? But the reality is that it is a part and parcel of how we live. I mean, when calculators came out, right, what are we going to do? Oh, people aren't going to know math. I mean, people still know math. They just, you use a calculator for things that you don't need to necessarily think yourself. Or one really good example is, this is pretty bad, but I was telling the team earlier last week that with Google Maps is artificial intelligence. We've all been using it for years, decades. And one thing it's done for me specifically, being a millennial, and barely a millennial, I'm almost a Gen Z, but a millennial, is that it's made me very bad with navigation without GPS, to the point where I've been the source of ridicule for my family because of it. However, by doing that, I remember when I moved from Boston to Florida, I drove down with my wife. And when we drove down, we had the trip. It was about 22 and a half hours. And then we selected avoid tolls on Google Maps. And it literally avoided every toll. So it would take us off the highway, avoid the tolls. But what it ended up doing is that we had phenomenally beautiful scenery that I don't think a person has the brain, maybe someone does, to be able to figure out how to go through that route. So the point is, instead of being on a highway the whole time, I was able to see so much beautiful scenery in the Carolinas and Georgia and Florida on that trip down. So very small piece, but the point is that the human element, that's what really cannot be replaced no matter what you do with AI. At the end of the day, artificial intelligence is artificial. It's not real intelligence. It's based on people. That's why, like, if you think about even the ethics around AI, like, why is AI biased? Like, why does AI do things that are right and wrong? Because it's based on humans. AI is flawed and will always be flawed because humans are flawed. Because AI, especially generative AI, is based on large language models. Now, what large language models do is they use this huge corpus of data, which is basically the internet, because Gen AI is trained on basically the internet and all these documents and all these images and all this information and articles and social media on the internet. That's what it's based on. So if AI is flawed and AI is biased, we have no one else to blame but ourselves, because we're flawed and we're biased, and it's always the way it will be. But that does not mean it's not helpful. That means it needs the proper guardrails when implemented, so you can use it in a very specific way that it is beneficial. So I'm forgetting the question now, genuinely. I got to be honest. Early, but
no, this is good. This is good.
Oh yeah. So the question, I believe, was, how do you use it to advance your career? So almost every technology company nowadays is affected by AI as well. You cannot bring a technology into a company really without AI. You can, but there's most technologies either need it or will be affected by it very significantly. So, I mean, the reason why generative AI is so cheap that even many of you have used it, which actually, that's the difference. It's gotten so cheap that if you're Amazon, or if you're what's a good example, like Walmart, now smaller companies can compete with Walmart, right? Smaller banks can compete with Wells Fargo or Santander Bank. Smaller law firms can compete with Morgan & Morgan. This is the difference, that it actually can be an aid to a lot of smaller companies to be able to use this kind of stuff to, if they have a 500 employee staff, what if that 500 employee staff can work at the level of efficiency of a 2,000 employee staff? Well, now that company, if as well, can compete with that kind of company. So it has a lot of positives. And what you can do to learn is just dip and dabble, like use ChatGPT, understand how it works, understand how prompt engineering works. The way I got into it is when I worked at State Street, which is a large custodial bank selling to other banks, basically. I had a rotation where they had a manual process, and I asked one of the engineers, the coders, I was like, what can we do with this? He's like, oh, you can just use Python. Python is a coding language. You can just learn it yourself. And he underestimated how long it would take, at least for someone of my IQ level, which is lower than the average human. So what ended up happening is it took me like 4 to 5 months to learn this very specific thing on Python. All I was doing was trying to automate the downloading of a file and then automatically saving it So it had the name of the file and then next to it, the name of the specific date of the actual date. So the point is, very simple thing, but by me going through the struggle to do virtually pointless automation, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how technology works, how code is built. I'm not a coder by any means, I never will be, but I know it at a baseline level to the point where I can verbalize it to clients to help them figure out how they could use it to better their business and to do better and thrive as a business. So that's what I would say is find ways to learn it, find little technologies, local technologies, coding, and look into it and do your research. And you can basically do any industry.
Great. Yeah,
And
Greg.
Christine, maybe to add to that or a related topic is, I think what AI is doing, and you'll hear companies talk about it, but the term is democratize data. And what that is doing is it's allowing people to use their creative areas, use their business areas, and eliminate the need for certain skills that are kind of hampering everybody using AI. And so generative AI is a great example. It's, if you think about artificial intelligence for years was really in the domain of practitioners, very smart people who are advanced degrees in deep learning and in mathematics. And they are the only ones who really could use AI. And that's who did all the development. And it was a very select group of people. What's happened in the last year really is with OpenAI and other companies with Gen AI, it's allowing the everyday user to use AI. You can have, and that's also causing some problems as you're finding in the student area, is now everyone has access to AI. You can create images, you can create music, you can create term papers, and that is definitely a challenge. On the other side, it's opening up areas that were unavailable. As Gabe just said, it took him, I forget what you said, Gabe, it took you a long time to learn Python. Well, there's tools now that you don't need to know Python. You don't need to know SQL language. You just type in your prompt. You're a data scientist, you're a data analyst, and you want to know, hey, what were my sales numbers for the last 15 quarters, and how is that potentially going to project seasonality for the next 4 quarters? You don't know how to write that in Python. You might not know how to write that in SQL. You write it in a prompt in English. It writes the code for you, and now it gives you back your answers. So that's generative AI right there, and that's happening now. So people that, I'm not saying that those languages are going away, but it's being able to democratize that information. So now anyone has access to it. So there's definitely, I can see concerns from jobs to creativity. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a business person, but I'm also a musician on the side as well too. And there's lots of talk around AI from the arts. What copyright infringement, or who actually owns a musical piece, or who owns an art piece if AI is developing it, yet it was based on maybe all of the singings of or all of the musical compositions of Frank Sinatra or Taylor Swift, and now you're creating a brand new piece of music that is sounds and looks just like them, with lyrics that would have been written by him, but it is not. So that's a lot of I don't have the answers to that today, but I can see where people both in the arts and in business world do have some concerns over that, because it is it could potentially impact people's careers and just how we look at art in general. But
yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I know that was the basis for the writers' strike and the actors' strike, right? And they worked in some language around trying to have some safeguards against AI in their businesses and industries. But I do think we actually had a question that came up about that exact issue that you just brought up. So, I think that's a really important one. I have been asked to visit our art department at PC because I think they have some faculty that are quite excited about AI. And one of their faculty came up to me and said, look, when photography first came out, people said, no one will ever paint again. We now can just take a picture and see the actual thing. And so why would you ever have anybody paint anything ever again, right? And that obviously was not the case. So, and then art just kind of morphed into, you know, a different kind of expression. So, so they're very interested in this topic and not as fearful of it as I would have thought, you know. So I'd be curious to know more about what they have to say about that. Okay, I think so. We're going to get into some of the potential downsides. I know we already brought up some of the ethical challenges. Gabriel, you kind of brought up this idea of the bias in AI, and you know, we did have a question also that came in about AI hallucinations. So I don't know if either one of you want to bring up anything more about bias or hallucinations in the AI.
I can comment on it. So this is coming from, because when it comes to like generative AI and the foremost one being ChatGPT from OpenAI and now Microsoft, I'm just taking it. When you ask it questions, and there was many of you have probably heard of this, but in the legal industry, what ended up happening is that there was a lawyer who used ChatGPT and it kind of made up information. It made up information, and then they basically are facing very large fines and jail time because they used that in some kind of proceeding. So the point is, it can literally, I mentioned generative AI, it creates new content. It can literally make up information. So one thing I've done, one thing I love looking up is statistics that help my clients. Like, oh, well, this percentage of banks are doing XYZ. But whenever I look up a stat on ChatGPT, the issue is that it doesn't always cite the source. So when I find the stat, which I can now find it much faster, I then try to find it on whichever website it actually is on. If I can then find it, then I use a stat. If not, I don't use a stat. It might be correct, but I'm not going to use a stat because it's not corroborated. So that's almost like a manual safeguard I'm doing against myself to make sure I have credibility as a human being that is a working professional. So there's not like one answer to everything, but when you ask generative AI a question, it can hallucinate because it's trying to pull together all this information and deduce an answer. But what we do, like I think someone had in the chat mentioned something about documents, is what we do is we use this huge thing of artificial intelligence, basically a super smart model, to look at documents and extract specific data from it. So we're doing such a linear specific thing that it hallucinates so much less. So my point is that when it comes to the business opportunities or the way you actually implement this, whether it's for you as a student and you're using it to help yourself study for a test or for homework, or an actual company using it, you got to figure out a way that you can use it in a way that's linear enough where it avoids hallucination. And there's this concept in the automation community and technology community called human in the loop, or HITL, but human in the loop. There are a lot of processes that you just want to have a human in the loop to validate what's going on. For example, let's say that I can throw 700 pages of documents through an AI engine and it spits out 98% accuracy, like accuracy of grabbing the right data, labeled extremely correct. Well, what about the 2%? Well, you can have a human validate the 2% of data that the AI was not sure about or had a lower confidence level interval of. So the point is, like the way cash is king, humans at the end of the day created AI, and therefore humans are greater than AI, and now humans need to use AI to support humans. That's the best way to do it. And again, if you're a company, and one more topic I want to touch here is the elimination of jobs. I've seen AI and automation be implemented at a lot of clients, different sizes. And I will say that when it comes to company culture, it can change company culture positively or negatively, but that all depends. Is like when it comes to AI, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. How you use that tool is on you and on the company using it. And it's a powerful tool at that, but I'm quoting Spider-Man now, but with great power comes great responsibility. But the point is, with that tool, like you need to know how to use it and use it to better your company, because if you just bring automation and you fire all your employees, it's not going to go well, because then your other employees that maybe are your high performers, they're going to leave as well. So the point is, companies can't just do that. They literally cannot. It's not good for the company. Companies know that now. So it's not just like, oh, we have AI, let's fire everybody. That does not work, because people have emotions and people have empathy, and people work for companies for 8, 10, 15 years, and people know certain information that you literally cannot teach AI sometimes. There's certain things that just no matter what you do, it's not quantifiable. And if it's not quantifiable, it's very difficult for AI to do it as effectively as a human, even if it could do it at a smaller sense. So that's kind of my perspective on this.
Great. Yeah, I like that you're as an auditing professor, right? We often talk about if you get information, you need to verify that information. And we tell students this as well. No student, I talked to a lot of students, by the way, and you'd be surprised to know that they're not looking to have ChatGPT write something for them and just cut and paste it into a document. A lot of times they don't trust what they're getting, and they will go and think about it and go look back at the original source to see, did it actually cite the source properly? And when we as faculty tell them to do that, we tell them ultimately you're responsible. And if AI is giving you something that's incorrect or just flat out a hallucination, you're going to be held responsible for it being wrong. And so we actually have students who are afraid to use it because of that. But I think that it's about trying to verify the information that you're getting, and trying to develop an expectation ahead of time about what you think you're going to get. And then does what you're getting look about what you're expecting, right? Similar to that. Greg, did you have any thoughts on this?
And I mean, I think Gabriel had touched upon a number of things. I think one of the other points I'll mention is that, you know, that is an issue, right? Hallucinations and, you know, giving out false information. But there are, you know, there's governance around regulations that are being put in place from the government, but also, you know, businesses are sort of, you know, self-checking themselves. You know, companies who are developing tools, who are developing, you know, platforms to develop AI, this is sort of their enemy, right? Like they are already developing tools within their own tools to help combat this, and they're not going to be a successful company if that continues. So they're already putting, you know, fixes in place to help combat that. And so, I mean, there's you know, a number of different, you know, guardrails, whether it's regulations or the companies themselves that are really working towards eliminating that problem from a bias perspective and from a hallucination perspective. You know, I'll add this. It may be not related to the hallucinations, but you know, it from a, you know, what's changed kind of perspective. So I've spent my career in business, and when I first started, you know, you were really, you know, if you were trying to, you know, work with a potential client, you were sort of, you know, you're doing your best to research that company, but it was sort of like, hey, here's my offering, and let's see if it fits. Today, you know, business and sales and account management has completely changed, where you now have access, especially when it comes to a public company, to years and years of data. And what AI is doing is ingesting that data and coming back and being able to provide real recommendations that are going to help that client or that company solve real business problems. So, you know, you ingest a quarterly report, you ingest transcripts of their earnings calls, and it can come back to you and say, hey, look, these are the main objectives, these are the main problems that are happening, and here's a match to what our company or your company can provide. And this is a great, you know, concise talk track that you can go and bring to an executive company that's going to allow you to have a meaningful, valuable conversation that's not just, hey, what are your problems this week? It's, I know exactly what your problems are, and we have something that can help fix it. And let's have an intelligent and a valuable conversation around that. And that's changed the game for sales professionals and for business people, because it actually allows them to provide real value, and gives them the tools and the, you know, the talk tracks to go have those conversations.
Right. Okay, I'm going to bring up a question that came up. That's a big question that we don't really even know how to answer because it's happening so fast. But somebody did bring up Sam Altman at OpenAI, and the fact that he is now apparently an employee of Microsoft, no longer the co-CEO of OpenAI, and there's some questions about the future of that company. Which is, and for those of you on that aren't familiar with OpenAI, they are the company that created ChatGPT. And so if you want to catch up, there's a lot that happened over the weekend from Friday to today with that story. But rather than talk so much, because I don't know if any of you could predict or have any comments on Sam Altman specifically, but the one of the issues I think at the heart of that whole saga was that OpenAI started as a not-for-profit company designed to kind of level the playing field, as you've kind of brought up, as well as try to put some guardrails up or protect humanity from the potential downsides of AI. And some board members apparently feel that they would rather have the company go under than allow it to keep going if the company is about now being a for-profit company that is going to monetize their product and sell it. So, I just want to go talk about this idea of this cautionary approach to AI and whether your companies have also, or your industries have thought about the potential AI, I guess, running amok, or, we've been talking about kind of a very task-oriented AI or AI that is beneficial to society, but are there any thoughts being given to some of the worst outcomes that could happen?
So, I guess I could take that. I will first preface by saying, for the purpose of this talk, these are my opinions, not the opinions of my company or my former companies, because I know that they're all, they will have, opinions on it. My personal opinion on this is that, the government is, I've never seen the government move so quickly on a new technology with such intelligence around it. When you read the executive order that came out, if you read that, you can tell that those people that looked into that were very, very knowledgeable about this topic you're talking about. And so they are putting guardrails in. I mean, they always talk about the government moving slow. Government's putting in some pretty, comforting, I would say, restrictions into this, including, setting up restrictions on chips, to our adversaries, chips like NVIDIA processors and those type. And so they're very aware of what can happen. And then I would say, and again, I don't have knowledge of every AI company, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Databricks. I mean, there are hundreds of AI companies developing it. And I would say that in my experience, it's being talked about within the companies, and people, these are not just blind companies that are like, machines. These are people that are running these companies, and they are aware of the concerns. They're working to address those concerns internally. I think, ultimately, between government regulations and companies kind of policing themselves, they are putting those restrictions in. I can't really comment on, what, foreign adversaries are going to do with it, but I think the government is, very much concerned, and that's why they're putting those regulations in.
All right, Gabe, we have only a few more minutes. So do you want to give some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I mean, well said, Greg. I think even when it comes to working with clients and they're purchasing AI, the amount of due diligence that they do is very intense. Like, this is not a decision they make within days or even weeks, at times months, at times even over a year. It takes for them to make the decision to finally bring it in after they've vetted something very thoroughly. On a side note, that, like Greg mentioned, there's so many companies. Like, I mean, something that made me think of is BlackBerry. I don't know how many of you use a BlackBerry, but BlackBerry was the iPhone before iPhone. BlackBerry, everyone had a BlackBerry. BlackBerry was everything, and now BlackBerry is not very widely used in the United States now. But iPhone was not the first. So sometimes, like, what if some of the companies that are out now are not going to be the ones that, like, the major winner 10 years from now? Like, a decade from now, will it be OpenAI, ChatGPT that maybe it will, maybe it won't? Will it be Google's Bard? Will it be Elon Musk's company? Will it be a whole other company that doesn't even exist yet? So it's just something to think about as well. Like, this moves so fast, and at the end of the day, the best technology with the best governance and that helps people the most will win. So.
Great. Thank you so much. We're coming up against our last few minutes. So I would like to thank both of our panelists for a great discussion about AI. I don't know if any of you have any quick final comments about the topic that we've been talking about, but
I mean, I guess I would just part by saying, AI, there is going to be so much to come with AI, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, it's really, it's like the tip of the iceberg right now. And I think, in terms of, I can't predict the future, but I do appreciate that there are, as I mentioned, there's governance out there with our government, working to make sure that this is done in a, at least as safe as they can manner. But I would also say that there are so many benefits to AI, and I pointed out a few from the healthcare and life science space. But it's going to make people's lives a lot easier. It's going to, it changed the way that people, behave, act, the way that they read, write, act. I mean, it's going to continue to change, and it's going to continue to evolve. So this is being recorded. You might look back in in a few years and say, oh, they were way off, or they were right on point. But I think the one thing that's definitely true is that it's not going away, and it's going to continue to evolve, and it's going to really start to make some major changes, I think, in the way that everyone kind of lives their lives. I'll end by saying a funny note. My son was trying to convince me to let him stay home from school on Wednesday because I had a half day, and his normal texts are very quick, quick 1 or 2 words. This was a fully hi Dad, I hope this text finds you well, completely written by ChatGPT. And it was a good argument as to why he could stay home from school. So I told him, I said, you gotta check those ChatGPT messages before you send them out, because they're pretty obvious. So to get his point, you need a little human in the loop.
All right.
Well done.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving, and thanks again to our panelists. And I bet there will be more on this topic to come in the future. So you may be hearing more from all of us at some point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.